Can you name one city that is home to nearly 600 technology companies that make up 35% of where Georgia leads technology companies? A city that also houses over a quarter of Metro Atlanta's top 25 technology employers, resulting in the city's daytime working population exceeding that of its residents. Greetings, everyone, and welcome from the Technology Association of Georgia. It's Friday, March 13, 2015, and this is Tech Talk. I'm your host, Frank Baia. Have you guessed the city? What if I told you that it also was one of the most robust and redundant fiber and power fiber infrastructure networks in the entire Southeast and has become a central hub for new and relocating technology companies? Well, if you guessed Alpharetta, you're right. Up to the Tech Talk, the technology city of the South, as we speak with Peter Tokar, Economic Development Director for the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, as well as President of the Alpharetta Technology Commission, a grassroots not-for-profit organization that was started in 2012 by the Alpharetta city leadership. Peter was recruited from an economic development executive position in South Florida in 2012 to lead the newly created Economic Development Department for the city and strategically built a roadmap for growth and development in Alpharetta. It's a Tech Talk focused on a city that not only is ready to compete globally in the digital economy, one that is already playing a major role in helping Georgia to become the technology world leader. It's a Tech Talk all about the technology city of the South, as we speak with Economic Development Director for the city of Alpharetta and President of the Alpharetta Technology Commission, Peter Tokar. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Peter, welcome to Tech Talk.
Thank you. Glad to be on.
Well, I think it was a couple of years ago, might have been a little longer than that. I remember one of the chamber executives or the local politicians were talking about how Alpharetta was going to be the new technology city of the South, and or the tech center of the South. And I think, a lot of us thought, well, we've all heard those branding commercials and the kind of approach that most cities take. But here's a case where you've not only said it, you've actually kind of did a Yogi Bear pointed to the stands and said, I'm going to hit a home run right there. I guess where I'm going is, let's talk a little bit about what's been going on in Alpharetta, because we hear a lot about the growth and expansion, especially obviously in the technology cluster.
Absolutely.
Well, give us some insight into what you think to be the reason behind that, and describe it for our audience.
Sure. I actually came up to Alpharetta from South Florida knocking on 3 years ago now. And one of the things that when I first came to the community, I was in awe of was how much was actually here. Because when you hear of, when you think of a suburb outside of Atlanta, you think traditionally, there's probably a couple businesses scattered about here and there, and it's largely going to be, residential. But when I first drove into the community, I exited off of Mansell and drove up North Point Parkway, and I was just amazed at all of the campus type environments that were well protected behind some very nice tree coverings to make the street look very pretty and everything like that. But behind this nice frontage was 300,000 square foot office buildings, and I was a little taken back at how much was here. So that kind of led into why are all these businesses out here? What's the driving factor? And from a study that we did. When I first got here, we identified that it was really kind of a very quickly evolving ecosystem based around the Georgia 400 transportation expansion. Mm-hmm. So, and then you can just kind of follow the bouncing ball from there. So, Georgia Department of Transportation made a significant investment in expanding Georgia 400, which went all the way up almost into South Forsyth. So shortly after that, now that there's this new arterial road in the Metro Atlanta region, businesses started looking at, where can we locate? And Alpharetta just seemed to be situated very nicely outside. There had been a couple really nice housing developments along Windward, the Windward the Windward development had land next to it, which brought in a data center. But one of the requirements of the data center was we're going to need fiber optic cable to run to run our data center by.
Sure. Sure.
So again, just looking at the follow the bouncing ball, since everything was largely agricultural up here, it was very easy for Georgia Power to run redundant power lines up here, which, when you're digging up the ground, you might as well put in fiber as well. So we were kind of early on benefactors of fiber optic cable in I guess it would be the early 90s, when fiber optic cable was just the latest and greatest technology for transmitting technical data. And because of that, we became a magnet for technology companies looking to utilize this types of technology. And if you rewind Alpharetta to the end of the 80s, we were a agricultural city with 3,000 residents. Fast forward that 25 years now, we are a 21 million square foot Class A office market with roughly 600 technology companies and close to 120,000 people here during the day.
Amazing.
So,
well, what's ironic is you mentioned 3 years ago too, and I know just within that 3-year period of time, so much growth has occurred. You've the whole downtown district and the new government buildings that you guys are expanding or actually building. Also Avalon, and I understand just recently there's been an announcement about the prospect of even a hotel and a conference center. So the growth is just exponential, I guess is the right term to use.
Right. And that is all a response to what has been coming up to Alpharetta, kind of what you alluded to earlier. Things are still continuing to grow and to happen here in Alpharetta. And what the ironic part about it is, through the probably mid to late 90s into the early 2000s, all the way up to 2006 when the recession kind of slowed everything down, Alpharetta was growing at such a rapid rate. We were going at roughly about 2 million square feet per year of new construction office space. And when you're a small suburban city that is now rapidly expanding, one of the things that you do is just kind of hold on to the reins of that horse and hold on as long as you can and ride it out. But you almost in what we did as a city, we missed what was coming in. Mm. So while all these office parks were being built and these technology companies were occupying, the city was just trying to keep up with the development. So 3 years ago, when the city decided, we've experienced all this growth, this recession has actually provided a lull where we can kind of catch our breath.
Really?
Which is funny to say that, that we were actually caught our breath during a recession, because we...
No, good luck or bad luck. It really has been a springboard for a lot of technology clusters. Even private enterprise has seen some opportunity to refresh legacy systems and adapt to what they call the transformation with IT. So it is something that happened sort of to us, but I think a lot of us use it for us, and you were certainly one of those areas. Go ahead.
Correct. And then once we caught our breath, the city actually took a look and said, okay, well, now that let's take a look at this development that's happened over the last 15 years, 20 years, and say, and what is it? What happened during all that time? And so we did a study, and as soon as I came on board, and they said, well, we need a department to manage the development. So previous to me coming to the city did not have its own economic development department. They had a economic development coordinator who worked in the community development department, but not a dedicated department. So I was kind of brought in to set up that department and kind of manage from here on what's going on here in Alpharetta. But once we actually took a look at the landscape of what made up Alpharetta, what that 21 million square foot office market was, we did a study, and it came back that it was largely technology, which was something absolutely fantastic to find out about your community, because high tech workforce creates a very strong community. So once we realized that technology was our main focus, that's when we moved forward with basing our our future efforts around technology and keeping that cluster of what we have. Obviously, we'll still continue to look at all businesses that we have for the best opportunities, but since we are so tech heavy and tech centric, we want to complement those businesses with other like-minded businesses.
Sure. So technology, we used the word cluster before, and truly it likes to cluster. The fintech industry, the internet security industry. So where there is a lot of opportunity, there's also a lot of businesses. Where there's a lot of businesses, there's a lot of opportunity. It kind of creates an eco-circle, as you mentioned before. Well, I'm guessing this is when the Alpharetta Technology Commission comes in. Maybe
Correct.
Go into a little bit about how that came about and why.
Right. So now that we've identified that technology was the cluster in Alpharetta, the city, we put our heads together and say, how are we going to support that industry? And it was the leadership largely from our mayor, David Belle-Isle, and our city administrator, Bob Regis, put their heads together and said, let's go talk to some of our tech companies and see if they'd be interested in providing us some expertise. Because as we sat around thinking, well, how do we as the city of Alpharetta support the tech industry, the notion came up, well, we can sit and bang our heads against the wall as much as we want. Why don't we go ask the companies? So that was when the Alpharetta Technology Commission came into effect, is when the city leadership actively reached out to our technology community and said, hey, we realize that you are what fuel this economy up here. How can we better support you? And so we went after a handful of small technology companies, medium-sized, emerging technology companies, and some of our large, established tech companies, invited their CEOs to participate in the Alpharetta Technology Commission as kind of a roundtable think tank for the city, and they all agreed, and that was about 2.5 years ago we put that group together, and since then we've just been making some great advancements in our programming and what we're kind of going after to not just recruit more tech companies, but to create a tech culture within Alpharetta that supports technology, which makes our community attractive for other tech companies to be in.
Well, that goes around that circle that we were talking about just a couple of seconds ago, and that obviously one of the key factors to a technology cluster, a technology city based with technology as its core economy are the workers. And obviously I think a lot of us automatically assume Midtown, Buckhead, that general area is where all of the hotspots are as it relates to technology growth, because that's where the people are, young people especially, near the university and that kind of thing as well, near Midtown and Tech, Georgia Tech. But talk a little bit about Alpharetta. Does Alpharetta's Tech Force exist, and tell us a little bit about what it's about?
Absolutely, and one of the things that we're trying really hard as a city is to really provide a narrative out there in the media and the public that tech talent is not just fresh out of Georgia Tech talent. Georgia Tech is producing some of the most amazing technologists out of the university, and they are doing amazing things. But there is a whole nother subset of workers out there that are not the fresh out of school tech workforce. They're the people who have been in the tech force for 10 years.
Sure, good point.
A lot of, we have over 80,000 people commuting into Alpharetta every day. So our workforce is close to 90,000 strong, and with primarily those being tech workers. Over 60% of those people coming in are going to a tech-related job when they come into Alpharetta. So one of the things, especially when they talk about the whole millennial generation and everything like that, I believe that there is a place, and there is demographics, and there is socioeconomics that the millennial generation want to have, but that's one aspect of it. I myself, I guess they call me the grandpa millennial, because I'm at the very, very beginning of when the millennial generation started. And I'm 35, and I live out here in, I guess, where other millennials would call no man's land, and there's plenty of stuff to do out here, and there's plenty of activities for my age group. Other millennials my age, we're not looking for the downtown environment anymore in the high-rise, playing frisbee golf. So having an environment that still caters to your core strength and your core passion of technology, but also providing kind of a hybrid environment that balances the tech world with lifestyle choices, such as I have kids now, and I'm looking for good schools, and North Fulton boasts the best schools in the state up here. So there's all these other aspects to where a workforce wants to be than just being downtown.
That's an enlightenment. I think a lot of our listeners would be glad to hear, because so much of our listeners fall into that same demographic that you're talking about. And, we're looking for a better quality of life. We're looking for the same type of opportunity as far as technology is concerned. But like you say, want a better balance than just necessarily what can only be found in some of what they think is hot spots around town, literally, figuratively. I stepped on the question as you were answering about Alpharetta's Technology Commission. Do they have a goal? Is there a pure set goal to the ATC?
Yeah, the goals of the ATC, the main overarching goal of everything is to promote a technology culture in Alpharetta. So, and what I mean by that is, and I'll use the most generic term that I can use for it is Silicon Valley. So I took a trip out to Silicon Valley a year and a half ago, solely to see what's the big deal is. Why when you talk about innovation and technology and companies, does Silicon Valley come to the top of the list almost every time? And I went out there and I sat in a couple coffee shops around, and I just talked to people as they came in. I said, "Where do you work?" "Well, I work over at Adobe," or "I work at here." And I just went in and started talking to people who were younger people and technologists. I said, "Well, why are you out here?" I said, "Is it because the opportunity is here?" And almost everyone I talked to, none of them named any companies like, "Oh, I'm out here because I want to work for Apple," or "I want to work for Google," or "I want to work for Adobe," or something like that. Almost every single person that I talked to said, because this is where innovation happens, because this is where like-minded people are. This is where I know I can come and meet people who are like-minded like me and are interested in the same things like me, which is all a culture piece. So bringing that experience back to Alpharetta and back to the ATC, it's one thing to have a lot of companies concentrated in one area. But if those companies aren't interacting with each other, if those companies aren't collaboratively working together, if there's not meeting spots where people can meet together just to talk and mingle, then that culture piece is missing. And for a long time, given the fact that we are a suburb and that our model is based on more campus-style environment, which is very inclusive to that technology company, we actually, and the fact that we're not an urban environment that's very dense, where you can't walk out of your building, walk down the street, there's two other buildings, and people aren't just running into each other because they aren't campuses. So the emphasis for us and for the Alpharetta Technology Commission is we need to create those connections up here. We need to physically create places where people can go. We need to foster innovation through establishing meetups, through doing hackathons, through all of these cultural style activities. And once we do that, and once it gets out in the ether that technology is happening in Alpharetta, then in our opinion, that's what will cause more companies to look our way and want to be here, because they'll want to be kind of like the Silicon Valley. They'll want to be where innovation is happening. They'll want to be where connections are made. So the main overarching goal of the Tech Commission is to really create that tech culture in Alpharetta, and that may be in the form of fostering incubators, creating a tech event, doing hackathons, creating meetup events, pretty much anything that is collaborative in nature. That's what we're trying to do through the Tech Commission in Alpharetta.
And adds to that tech culture. We're quickly running out of time, Peter, but I can tell you that some of our listeners are probably, just like myself, will be impressed with the insights that you've shown today, because I think a lot of us take it for granted and assume we're fighting in the same competitive environment, and we are to a degree, but I think you guys are pinpointed some really unique selling propositions and are strongly going about building that culture and starting to show its benefits. But once again, congratulations for so much of what you've already done. But wow, the future, they say looks so bright you got to wear shades. Congratulations, and keep up the good work. Before we finish, let me ask you this question. How would somebody, especially our listeners, get in touch with you if they wanted to find out more information?
We just put together a brand new website for Alpharetta called growalpharetta.com, and it speaks a lot more than a traditional municipal website. This is specifically designed around economic development. It's very cutting edge, very modern, has lots of videos on there about Alpharetta, has a lot of infographics about what's changed and how things have been moving forward. So that would be a great place, and then my contact information is on there as well. So I would highly recommend anyone seeking more information go to our new website, growalpharetta.com.
Well, Peter, again, thank you so much for taking time. I'm sure it's a busy schedule to join us for a few minutes today on Tech Talk.
I appreciate you having me.